Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. The sun is out, the grass is being cut, the actor is ready, and so is Arne Slot and his Liverpool side. We've just heard from him ahead of the Community Shield game against Crystal Palace, and suffice to say that he's in a good mood. He believes his team has what it takes to not only take this game but also defend their Premier League title. He was asked unsurprisingly about Alexander Isak, and even less surprisingly, he didn't answer. But we did hear some interesting news about Darwin Núñez. We heard about the progress of Joe Gomez. We heard obviously about the progress of Rio Ngumoha, the guy who we can't stop talking about. And also, I had a very interesting answer to my question regarding attacking depth, in which we found out the answers to a few questions that we weren't sure about. Want to know more? Of course you do. You know where to come. Back to the lab. And here we are, back in the lab, away from the roar of the lawnmowers, ready to deliver my verdict on what a rather chipper Arne Slot had to say in his pre-match press conference ahead of the game against Crystal Palace. Now, I must admit, it did feel good to be back there. It's been a bit of a roller coaster of a summer for us Liverpool fans, quite a few lows, but a lot of ridiculous highs. But being back there amongst all the people in the reception, amongst my fellow journalists, ready to hear what Arne Slot had to say in his brand new Adidas gear, it did feel good. It did feel like we're ready to attack this season once again. And that's pretty much the view Arne Slot had as well. He looked like he was ready for everything we were going to give him, just as he will hopefully be ready for everything Crystal Palace and then Bournemouth afterwards will give them. Now, last season, we always started with a bit of contract news, but considering where we are in the season ahead of September the 2nd, I feel like this bit needs to be taken up with transfer news. So yes, as I mentioned previously, he was asked about Alexander Isak, but as we've seen many times, Arne Slot does not talk about players until they're Liverpool players. He also doesn't talk about players on their way out until they've officially gone. So he wasn't willing to answer questions about Darwin Núñez and talk about the totality of his career, deliver the eulogy to his Liverpool career, so to speak. I'm pretty sure that will come next week, because it did sound like it was just a formality. But as for Isak and signings in general, there was no news, there was no nuggets for you to all hold on to. There'll be more of that in my top takeaways, don't worry. There was also a little bit of injury news. We did find out that Joe Gomez is still not ready to join up with his teammates, but Alexis McAllister will be in the squad for the game against Crystal Palace at Wembley. We didn't hear about Conor Bradley though, so I'm not entirely sure where he is with his rehab, because he had a little bit of a minor knock that kept him out of the games against Athletic Club. Alisson Becker is back in the country though, so expect to see him in goal between the sticks at Wembley. Okay, without any further ado, let's get into my top takeaways. Top takeaway number 1, Slot is playing poker. Now, a lot of you would have got a little bit twitchy when Slot was talking about his centre-back options and how he feels about them. He was asked by Vinny O'Connor whether or not he needs to go back into the transfer market to be able to get another centre-half. Slot mentioned Joe Gomez, even though lots of people seem to be writing off Joe Gomez. Although he is currently injured, we do need to mention that. Liverpool do have 2 senior centre-backs that are currently fit and available, and probably both of them will be playing in this game against Crystal Palace. Now, Vinny O'Connor mentioned the fact that Andrew Robertson, Wataru Endo and Ryan Gravenberch have all been options at centre-half, and Slot was like, yes, these are all very options. We've got lots of people who can play centre-half. Don't worry about that. Now, this was clearly a tactic. When you are a manager, you don't really want to go out and say publicly, oh yes, there's a big hole here in my squad. We desperately need to fill it. Because your Richard Hugheses and your Michael Edwards, it makes their job a lot harder, because then the negotiations are coming from a position of weakness. Any selling club's like, well, you clearly need a defender, so we can start to put the price up. Or if you're in a situation where there's a bit of cat and mouse going on, for example, around Crystal Palace and Mark Gahey, they've got their captain, who's in the last year of his contract. They don't want to let a very good player, a very important player to them go for not a lot of money. Liverpool are like, well, he's in the last year of his contract, so we're not going to pay 40, 45, 50 million pounds for a player we can get for nothing in 12 months' time. So there is some cat and mouse going there. The links to Giovanni Leone at Parma are still very strong. My gut feeling is that the Liverpool will still bring in 1 centre-half in this window. And that's right, it will be one centre-half. I do believe, as I said, Slot still believes in Joe Gomez to be a viable option across the season. And I think we've seen from history, Liverpool, both Slot and Jurgen Klopp, didn't really want to go with any more than 4 senior specialist centre-backs at a club. Now, other clubs do it differently. Obviously, yesterday we heard about the devastating injury to Levi Colwill, which will have been a bit bad news for what I think is a very good player. And Chelsea are apparently going back into the market. Apparently, maybe even looking at Mark Gahey. But they already have 5 senior centre-backs within their squad. And that's not including the 2 in Disasi and someone else I'm forgetting, who they're actively trying to sell. Nor is it factoring in Reece James, who has played at centre-half as well. So they've got like 8 potential options, even without Colwill, and yet they are still going back into the market. That's just the way they do things. We've already seen Chelsea are crazy about transfers, so we can't really use them as a yardstick. But fear not, everybody. I don't think this is going to be another 2021 situation where Liverpool tries to go in with 3 senior centre-halves and a few other mix and match options, and it all goes horribly wrong. I don't think that's what we're going to see here. Top takeaway number 2, Slot is mindful of man marking. Now, when asked about the last time Liverpool went to Wembley against Newcastle, Slot didn't want to dwell on that game too much. I think he was very keen to kind of put that down as a bad day at the office. And there were some mitigating circumstances, considering Liverpool had a very tough week going out of the Champions League to PSG, etc., etc. However, although Palace do normally play a different kind of low block tactic to Newcastle did, Slot did flag up the potential and possibility for Palace to change to a man marking system. Now, Slot has seen many teams over the course of his Liverpool tenure change up the way they normally do things just to face Liverpool. But it was interesting that he pointed out about the man marking system because, in all honesty, I don't think Liverpool played it very well in his tenure. If you look back to the game against PSG, if you look back to the game against Bologna, which although Liverpool won, that was only because they missed a whole host of chances, and the League Cup final against Newcastle. In fact, you could go even further back beyond Arne Slot and go to a lot of this Liverpool team was still there when Atalanta came to Anfield and tore Liverpool apart with that man marking system. So it's clear to see that Liverpool haven't as yet really worked out how to play against it. Now, as I mentioned, they did win that Bologna game, and Ryan Gravenberch was very key to that in as much as his ability to drive forward with the ball, because the one way to do beat a man marking system, if everyone is marking one person, if you beat your man, then technically you are into space and then you draw others towards you and then you can funnel the ball off that way. He was key to that. Maybe that's what Liverpool need to work on. Hopefully Liverpool have been working on that over the course of this pre-season period. But it will be interesting to see if Palace believe it's enough of an Achilles heel for them to go against what they normally do and give it a try. Top takeaway number 3. Nowadays, everybody wants to talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move the lips. Just a bunch of gibberish. Motherfuckers act like they forgot about Trainioni. But Arne Slot doesn't forget about him, and every time someone wants to bring up Rio and Gamoa, Slot is keen to make the point that Trainioni is very young as well. He's only just turned 18 and he's there in amongst the first team as well. He was asked about Rio and Gamoa and about how he's going to manage the expectations that have exploded around him and how he deals with being a first team senior player even though he's only 16. And Slot cited the fact that this time last season it was Trainioni who was making all of the headlines. He scored a goal in pre-season and everyone was saying that he's going to be the next big thing and he was going to explode on the scene in a similar way. But Slot and Liverpool have been able to manage him quite well. He has still seen a little bit of first team minutes. He has been in and around the squad, but he's not been thrown straight in. Now, I do wonder whether or not Rio and Gamoa is going to have a different scenario than Trey. I wonder whether or not he is going to get more senior minutes. I'll be talking a little bit more about that when it comes to Slot answering my question about attacking depth. But I do think it's fascinating that maybe one of the tactics Slot is going to use to try and dampen down the expectation and the hype around Rio is to pair him with Trey and say, look, it's not just him, it's both of them. I do think that, as I've mentioned previously, they're in a very, very good place to be able to not get ideas above their station, not get ahead of themselves as young players, to understand they are still very much at the beginning of their journey. There's a lot of work ahead of them. Slot talked about the fact that the next step in their development is to be able to play well every 3 days, because that is what it takes if you're going to be a Liverpool first team player. You've got to be on it. You've got to be ready to go every 3 days. And to be honest, we heard Arne Slot say very similar things about Curtis Jones, about how that's the next step in his development. And he's 24 years old. So this is not something that's new to the group. It is not something that they aren't going to be able to deal with. They aren't going to be able to handle. So I'm not that concerned about Rio. I think we also have to pay more attention to Trey. Now, last season, we're not sure where he was within the pecking order, but Tyler Morton has since departed. It looks like Stefan Bajcetic is going to depart. We don't know about the future of James McConnell, but I suspect he'll probably go out on loan again. So then it becomes Trey and Wataru Endo, who are kind of what you'd call the B team in terms of central midfielders behind Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai and Jones. How much game time he'll get, how many squads he'll get into, we'll have to wait and see. But as I said, I do think it's important, or Slot feels it's important, to not just single out Rio. Don't forget about his mate either. Now, as promised, it's time to hear what Arne Slot had to say about my questions about attacking depth, in particular surrounding Mo Salah's absence for AFCON. Hi Arne, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the attacking depth of the squad. First out of the season. Last year in the Premier League, you were able to name 5 senior attackers in 32 of the 38 league games, and 6 senior attackers in 13 of the 38 league games. I wonder what importance that depth, not only on the pitch but on the bench, had to the success last season, and are you trying to replicate it again this year?
Yeah, I don't know what senior players exactly means. Does that mean that you play for your country, or you have a certain age, or because a player like Rio showed in the last few games he played for us that at senior level he can have an impact as well. So we think we already have a lot of attacking power in our team. So when I think about Cody Gakpo, Federico Chiesa, Hugo Ekitike, Mo Salah, Jeremy Frimpong, who can play as a right winger, Florian Wirtz, who can play as a left winger. So I already feel I have a lot of attacking options in my current squad. But as always, as a club, we are always looking at the chances in the market. But that can also be in the midfield or in the last line.
Also, with obviously last season Mo Salah being so consistent in his appearances, it didn't really give a lot of opportunities for someone like a Chiesa. This year, obviously, we've got the African Cup of Nations coming, so there's going to be a little bit of a time when Mo Salah isn't around. Are you going to be thinking about that in terms of squad building and recruitment, or does, as I say, this give more opportunity to someone like Chiesa?
Yes, we definitely thought about that, and we brought in Jeremy Frimpong because we think he can play as a right fullback, but I also think and feel he can play as a right winger. So yes, we did thought about the fact that we're going to miss Mo. I think as a maximum 6 games, but that's quite a lot in the Premier League, especially if you see how well he did last season. So yeah, signing Jeremy Frimpong was for multiple reasons, but one of them was also that he could replace Mo if Mo is not there, but there are other options for me to replace Mo with as well. But Jeremy is definitely one of them.
I had to start the season off with a stat, didn't I? Hey, we are really back, aren't we? Now, whenever Slot gets kind of tied up within the semantics of one of my questions, there's a couple of reasons that I always think of. Number 1, maybe it means my question's a bit too long and meandering. Number 2, maybe it means that he just doesn't want to answer it. This time, I think there was a third option, and that's just how he wanted to answer the question. Now, he obviously took umbrage with my definition of what is a senior attacker, but I think he used it as a way of saying, well, no, I view Rio and Gamoa as one of the senior attackers. The question is whether or not he views him as the 5th attacker, or whether he views him as a 6th attacker. And a lot of that will come down to the future of Federico Chiesa. Another question from last season that hasn't seemed to have gone away, and we didn't really get a chance to dive into it this time. I'm sure we'll get plenty more opportunities before the transfer window closes to answer those questions. But Last season, Chiesa was the 6th senior attacker and he made 19 Premier League squads, making 6 appearances and 104 minutes. Now, if you think, can Rio and Gamoa do that? My answer is yes, very much so. You can easily see him making 6 appearances. You could easily see him making more than 104 minutes. However, Liverpool's 5th senior attacker last season was Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez was in 35 Premier League squads, making 30 appearances, 8 of which were from the start, and he played 1,118 minutes. Do we think Rio can do that? No. Do I think Chiesa can do that? I'm not sure. So the idea that even if Liverpool were to buy Alexander Isak and then sell Federico Chiesa and leave themselves with 4 senior attackers, Gakpo, Salah, Ekitike and Isak, and then add Rio and Gamoa to make it 5, that feels light to me. Now, the second part of the question, when I was talking about Mo Salah being away at AFCON, Slot revealed that Jeremy Frimpong very much is seen as a right-wing option. And it sounds like he was almost bought with those AFCON minutes in mind, which is all well and good. There's no doubt that Frimpong can play as a right-winger and can play very well as a right-winger. And then you do start to kind of stretch it out a little bit more. The problem with that, though, is that you're then looking at your right-back stocks. And you're thinking, well, okay, Conor Bradley and Joe Gomez are our main right-back options, who've both had injury issues over the course of last season, and as of right now, are both currently injured. So you're taking a bit of a risk there. I don't know whether or not we saw Dom Szoboszlai as right-back with that in mind. Maybe he comes in as the 3rd right-back option. Kind of feels a little bit horses for courses to me, that one, to be honest with you. But Mo Salah's going to miss 6 Premier League games, maybe even 1 Champions League game, because the midweek after the final is a Champions League game, and if Egypt gets to the final, then he will miss that game. The idea that you think maybe if there's an injury to one, or maybe even both of Bradley and Gomez, and you're asking Szoboszlai to be the right back for that amount of time, I just think it's a stretch, to be honest. Now, obviously, I'm not Arne Slot. We know that he likes to have a lean squad. So we'll have to wait and see exactly how many attackers Liverpool decide to bring in. I do still believe Alexander Isak will end up a Liverpool player before the window closes. Whether or not Liverpool decide to buy another attacker on top of that remains to be seen. Whether Liverpool decide not to sell Federico Chiesa also remains to be seen. But all that to come. All that can wait for future press conferences and future press conference reviews. For now, this is all you're getting. I want to say thank you all for coming back with me. Now, I know that I was away over the summer. I did nothing on this YouTube channel, which all the experts will tell you is a terrible idea if you want to grow your channel, but I had other things to do. Frankly, I had other things to do. But I'm back now, and I'm ready to give you all of my attention. I will be at Wembley on Sunday for the game. I will be doing it from the press box, so look out for some match report. I look out for some other kind of behind the scenes footage from me on my Instagram account. I might even do a roundup video on here on YouTube just to say thank you to all of you for sticking with me. Otherwise, the next press conference will probably be next Friday, and we'll be back with you all then. Take care.